college football because Georgia. They should have lost to Kentucky. They did not. They barely won. But in
Yes,
my
because
opinion,
Mark
Scott,
Stoops just decided to punt on
yes.
fourth down,
Um,
stupidly.
in my opinion, I think it is clear who is the best team in college football.
The Texas Longhorns.
Going into last week, I think we had a three-way tie. I think it was Ohio State, I think it was Texas, and I think it was Georgia. I think you could have made an argument for any of those three. I think now, even above Ohio State, I think Texas is just really good. I don't see how they lose a game. I think they have two quarterbacks. They have Arch Manning. They have Quinn Ewers, who obviously went down. Even if he doesn't play, I think Arch Manning can be what J.J. McCarthy was. I said this about Texas last week, that I think they are the Michigan of this year. They just have too much talent, and they have more speed than Michigan did, and they can run the football. They can throw by you, and their defense is physical. They have first round talent all over the board. Like, if this team doesn't make a national championship, at this point, I'll be absolutely shocked.
So when I look at the upcoming schedule for Texas, they have Louisiana Monroe this week. Whoop de frickin' do. Then they host Mississippi State. Then they have their bye week. Then they've got the Red River rivalry game against Oklahoma. And then they host Georgia. So you they can get by with Arch Manning for this week against UL Monroe and against Mississippi State. But I think if Texas wants to be a legitimate championship contender, they need Quinn Ewers back for those two games against Oklahoma and Georgia. Because
That's the toughest game of their season. I mean, if they split with Georgia and Oklahoma, they'll be fine. If they go 2-0, I don't think you're stopping them.
that's the biggest test of their season right there. Because I don't think they play Alabama this season, if I'm
I
not
don't think
mistaken.
I don't think so either.
I'll double check. No,
No,
they don't. They don't play Alabama.
you know, you will probably know this more than I do. I know the Big Ten has gotten rid of divisions. Has the SEC gotten rid of divisions as well?
Yes,
So,
once.
so the SEC championship game will just be the two best teams.
Yes, once Texas and Oklahoma came in, they got rid of the SEC East and the SEC West.
So it's probably going to be Texas versus either Georgia or Alabama. Then whoever wins that Georgia Alabama game will probably play Texas in the SEC championship game.
Most likely. Um, I mean, we saw Texas go through, or a team like Texas go through this last season where, you know, they go up to Alabama or go over to Alabama, excuse me, and just romp. And and that kind of took them on the road to the college football playoff.
And they had Washington beat last year. They just couldn't get a stop.
Yeah. We'll see if they can go on that same road this season after winning a huge game in Michigan. But going to Georgia, I maybe it's just that they didn't get up for Kentucky or something because they're looking ahead to the game against Alabama. But I'm just like, you destroyed Clemson in the opening game of the season.
Yeah, but remember that game? They didn't score in the first half. They did it all in the second half.
Yeah, I get that, but still, they like turned it on and completely wrecked Clemson. And you're like, okay, Georgia looks like they're back. And then they put up a conundrum like this, and you're just like, what? I don't get
Well,
it.
I don't think Georgia has the offensive talent they did a couple years ago. I think
Well,
this is a more.
yeah, they're not gonna, because you
Well,
know,
that's what I'm saying. They're not gonna fly by you. They're not gonna put up 50 points every week. They're gonna run the football, play action, play good defense with Kirby Smart defensive mind, and force turnovers. That's why I actually think Texas is a bad matchup for them because Texas has speed and Texas can win in a multitude of ways. I don't know if Georgia can win in a multitude of ways. I don't know if Georgia can win in a shootout.
We're gonna find out because, like like we talked about, they play at Texas, they play at Alabama. They've got some big SEC matchups coming up.
And Ohio State, to me, obviously, we know the talent they have, but we got to find out if they can really play against big boys.
Yeah, and we're not really gonna find that out until they head to Autzen Stadium on October 12th to play the Oregon Ducks.
And
Because
Oregon's not as good as we thought, in my opinion.
okay, fair, but you look at what Ohio State has coming up, like I'll pull up their schedule. They've got Marshall this week, which they're favored by 40. Then they're at Michigan State. They host Iowa, at Oregon, host Nebraska, at Penn State, host Purdue, at Northwestern, host Indiana, and host Michigan. I only see like 2 games where they could really be challenged.
Agree with you there. Speaking of the Big Ten, how about this? USC makes their Big Ten debut in the Big House against Michigan. And I'll be honest with you, I know Michigan's a tough minded, gritty defensive team, but what I've seen out of Lincoln Riley and Miller Moss, who I think runs this offense more efficiently, I'm not saying he's better, but I think he runs the offense more efficiently than Caleb Williams because he's not making the off script plays. I don't think Michigan is a very good offense. They'll play better because they don't want to be embarrassed again like they were against Texas. But I'm not sure if by the end of this thing, if it's not close in favor of USC.
Oh, I think USC is going to win this game, but I think there might be some jitters for USC. The fact that their first Big Ten game is on the road against the defending national champions. I get that Michigan is not the same team they were last season, but they're still the defending national champions nonetheless. You're in that 3:30 window on CBS. You know, I feel like a lot of the country is going to be watching. I think there's a bit of more pressure on USC, so that could be what keeps Michigan in this game for maybe like 3 quarters.
You
I
just alluded to it. I think this is a showcase game for Lincoln Riley and Miller Moss.
it, and I totally see your point there, but I just think like maybe it's only for through the first half, but they could have some jitters being that it's their first official Big Ten game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think early they will, and I agree. I think there's pressure on USC because I do think, it's going to be very hard. They have a not a brutal schedule, but they don't have an easy schedule by any means. But if they win this game against Michigan, I think it will go a long way in USC staking a claim that they are a top 12 team to get into the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, you look at USC's schedule the rest of the way. They're at Michigan, then they host Wisconsin, then they're at Minnesota, they host Penn State, at Maryland, host Rutgers, at Washington, host Nebraska, at UCLA, and then they host Notre Dame.
So to me, they're gonna probably have to run the table, right? The toughest game of that West is at home against Penn State, but they get them at home. This will be their toughest road game. UCLA may give them, just because it's UCLA. Their Chip Kelly's not there anymore, so I really don't know how good that team is. But I know that's a big rivalry out there in California, so UCLA may give them a game. But I think if USC wins this game, they're on the path to the CFP.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Wisconsin could be a tough game for USC because it is Wisconsin. I know how.
And they have a new look offense. They did give Bama a little bit of a first half, but that game's also now going to be at USC,
Correct, yes.
which I think is going to be hard for Wisconsin. I think it would be different if that game's in Badger City.
Yes, I agree.
All right, well, you wanted to bring this up. Let's talk about Oklahoma as the
Yes.
state takes center stage in college football this week.
Yes, because there are 2 big games happening this Saturday in Oklahoma. First, in a huge Big 12 showdown, you've got the number 12 Utah Utes undefeated at 3-0, taking on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, also at 3-0. Oklahoma State is number 14 in the country, I believe. Um, I think this could be a big game, not only for the Big 12, but possibly it could be a huge game in determining who goes to the college football playoff and who gets left out. This could be one of those games that the committee looks back at and says, who won that game? And then over in Norman, Oklahoma, in the night game, college game day is going to be there. The Oklahoma Sooners make their official SEC debut when they host the high flying number 6 Tennessee Volunteers. So you got two huge games this weekend, which both could have major playoff implications. Tennessee is a 7-point favorite against Oklahoma. And if
I would like to just point out that Tennessee beat my Kent State University 71-0 last week, including being up 61-0 at halftime.
Yeah. Um, and you've got Utah, who is favored on the road by 2 against Oklahoma State. So I think both of these games could have major ramifications, not only on their respective conferences, but on who goes to the college football playoff and who gets left out.
I agree with you, though I'll say this in the long run, I don't think those games will truly matter. I think it may matter for Tennessee and Oklahoma because I think Tennessee needs to win this game. But I really think there's only about 4 to 6 teams, maybe, that can win the national championship. I think that will be my biggest problem with the 12-team playoff. If Utah gets in, I'm sorry, they're not a national championship team. If Oklahoma gets in, I don't really think they are either. Same with Oklahoma State. To be honest with you, I really think that college football, 12 team, whatever, unless it's a team like last year, like Washington, that clearly was a very good team, though I thought Georgia was the top 4 team in the country. I just think we should have an all SEC Big Ten playoff. I'm just being honest with you. Those are the best teams in the country.
Yeah. Um, that's why it's even more frustrating that, like, you get teams like Tennessee hosting, Kent State or UL Monroe or these.
I'm sorry. That was the biggest joke of a college football game I think I've ever seen in my life.
I'm like, Tennessee, grow a set. How about you go play Ohio State? How about you go play Oregon?
We
Or
good over here. We can play 5 cupcakes and then roll into the college football playoff. I agree with you. Like they're big games for the schools, but let's be honest: Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, maybe Ole Miss. Am I missing anybody? Is that about the 5 or 6 teams?
I would say so. I would include Oregon in there.
Yeah, again, I need to see them play Ohio State. If they get boat raced by Ohio State the way they came out flat to start the year, now they had a big win last week, but if they get boat raced and they get ran over by Ohio State, remember a couple years ago, I believe Mario Cristobal was still there. They beat Ohio State in in the horseshoe. That was a noon game on Fox.
Yes.
Um, so I think Ohio State's going to know that. They're going to have revenge on their mind. That should be a good game. That's going to be an NBC night game. I need to see Oregon play well in that game to see if they could compete.
Fair. But it's just like we last year we got, or in the past 2 years, we got like Ohio State against Notre Dame in a home and home series. I know Alabama boat raced Wisconsin, but still, Alabama played Wisconsin at Camp Randall Stadium. Texas, again, I get it. They boat raced Michigan, but still, Texas was willing to play Michigan in Ann Arbor. Like, Tennessee, why don't you play at Ohio State? Like, LSU. Let's do LSU at Penn State, for example. Games
I
like that.
I think you can make an argument that The SEC is obviously the Southeastern Conference. The Big Ten is what it is. It's the Big Ten. These conferences used to be regional. They're not regional anymore. And we didn't talk about it much on the show, but I know the Big 12 is expanding, and I believe Clemson's getting in it, a few other teams. But the SEC and the Big Ten are still the two best schools in the country. That I think you can make an argument between the SEC, the Big Ten, if you want to, for some diversity, throw the Big 12 in, get rid of all the cupcake schedules and just do what mostly college basketball does, which is conference schedule.
Yeah, and like they'll do like the neutral site games, but they'll still do like the Big 12, Big 12 ACC challenge where you'll get like, or I'm sorry, Big 12 SEC challenge, and you get like Kentucky at Kansas. That's usually a big game when those two play each other. Or like you might get like Villanova at at Kentucky. That's a big game. Something like that.